Energy Minister Chris Bowen has laid down the gauntlet to opponents of net zero. You're either in favour of net zero by 2050 or you're in favour of destroying the planet. That's right. It's that simple, according to Chris Bowen. Climate catastrophists good, everyone else evil.
Net zero by 2050 was set out by the IPCC as the minimum action required to avoid the catastrophic impacts of climate change. I mean, if you're not for net zero, you're for the catastrophic impacts of climate change.
Well, hang on a second. The US have withdrawn from the Paris Accords. Does that mean that they're in favour of destroying the planet?
And China is committed to net zero, but not until 2060. That's a decade after the world will have been destroyed.
What about India? India's committed to reaching net zero, but not until 2070. That's 20 years too late, according to Chris Bowen.
So, by Chris Bowen's logic, the United States, China and India are all in favour of catastrophic climate change, and that's not to mention various members of the coalition.
Oh, my goodness, how terrible. But the problem is, I don't know what Chris Bowen thinks we're going to do about it, given Australia's 1.3% of global emissions.
Well, you know, this is a demonisation of your opponents, and it's typical behaviour from the left. I mean, you're either in favour of net zero or you want to destroy the planet. And if you want to destroy the planet, you're not worthy of being listened to. What sort of person would you be? This is the way they argued. They did the same in the same-sex marriage debate. You were either in favour of same-sex marriage or you were against love. And who would bother listening to someone who's against love? They did it with the voice. They framed it as, you know, the voice to Parliament was a gracious, modest request. So if you were against the voice, well, you were ungracious and you were immodest. This is the way the left argue. Chris Bowen went on to talk about the fact that, well, even though Trump has pulled out of the Paris Accord, the United States only accounts for 12% of emissions. So he said, we've still got 88% of emissions we can do something about. But of course, he forgets China accounts for 31% of that 88. That leaves 57. India accounts for 7% of the 57. That leaves 50%. So you're only talking at best about 50% of emissions, of which Australia accounts for
1.3%. And then the other problem is, how much is this going to cost and who's going to bear the cost? Because Chris Bowen and the Labor Party are setting Australia up to be economic martyrs for net zero, and our martyrdom is going to make zero impact on global emissions. So why are we forcing Australian families to pay more for their energy? Why are we deindustrialising our country, exposing us to huge geopolitical risk, all for this net zero goal, which, while it is a great goal to want to protect the planet, at what cost?
And this characterisation that you're either on board with Labor's net zero or bust plan, otherwise you're somehow evil and complicit in the destruction of the planet, it just isn't true. I mean, you could reduce emissions, but there's also mitigation against climate change. Instead of spending billions reorganising the energy grid, you could spend billions on mitigation. And then we're told continually, you know, the science is settled. That's another one of these arguments, right, where it seeks to disenfranchise anyone with a slightly different opinion. I was reading in the papers today, do you know, back in 1995, the New York Times said that by 2025, all the east coast of American beaches would be destroyed and completely gone. And that's just, we could fill this entire show, Freya, talking about failed climate predictions. So again, for Bowen to characterise it as you either believe us or otherwise you're somehow evil and unworthy to be heard is the most ridiculous way to conduct a public debate on what is the most important issue facing our country right now.
And they clearly don't think it's that important, because why then would they refuse to even consider cheap, reliable, net zero, emission-free power in the form of nuclear energy? That just exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of Labor's energy policy.
Are you saying if you're not in favour of cheap, emission-free nuclear power, you're in favour of destroying the planet?
Oh, my goodness. Exactly right.
That's Chris Bowen's argument,
That is,
right?
essentially that is.